Hello, and welcome to the prep video for the third session in this mini-series. If you don't know what this is about, I would suggest you watch the beginning of the playlist linked in the description. It has both the videos on this, the second channel, and also the live stream archives which are on the main channel. Let's actually get started with this session. It looks like they might be trying to break out Mima's brother first, although I'm not entirely certain about that yet. Right at the end, we ended with Kaa basically dive bombing to shout Mima's name. I would imagine that Emichu's idea behind that probably was so that if he is being held in one of the prison rooms on the outside with the barred windows, that he might be able to wave out or signal somehow where he is, which to me says that at least Emichu is considering breaking him out. There is a myriad of ways that they could go about doing this, and I can't possibly prepare for all of them. What is probably best for me to do now is just come up with a basic layout of that kind of prison dungeony complex, and maybe come up with a few key NPCs there, like Captain of the Guard or something like that, and just improvise the rest of it. Well, I'm going to quickly make a... What are you doing out there? Also, I will point out, I'm recording this video on Thursday, and the game is tomorrow, and I've got stuff to do today, so let's try to keep this a bit shorter, if possible. I think it's time to come up with a basic layout for this. So, is there anything more we need to come up with on this sort of scale? I don't think so. So I've had the idea of Mima's brother maybe already having been sent off to Gemhaven to work as a labourer in the mines. It would mean that the party pretty much has no reason to not set off on the treasure road, passing through Vale Rift, doing all that stuff. The only thing that I don't necessarily like about this is that the world changing and shifting to kind of counter the player's initiative a bit, which I'm not a big fan of, because on the one side of this topic, I didn't say that Mima's brother is still here. I didn't say it's been 3 weeks. And so in that time, it's totally realistic for the paperwork to already have been processed and for him to have been sent off to the mines as punishment, to work as a labourer there. And so there wouldn't be any contradiction or retconning or anything like that. And making changes to the world building, depending on what the players do, especially in a game where so much is made up on the spot anyway, is totally fine. But to me, it does, in this particular case, feel like I'm taking away a bit from the player's agency. Because if the players do want to try to break him out, then having that be an option, a path that the players could take, is something good, because that's what the players came up with. I want the players to be able to take that path. And if I change this so that Mima's brother isn't there anymore, he's where the plot is, then that's taking that initiative away from the players. But in this particular case, for this game, I have to also consider the game's length. I'm leaning on the side of making this change. Even though if this were a longer campaign, then I would not do this. I would just let the players explore the world how it is, and whatever path they choose, even if it wasn't in my original plot, that's the path that then they follow. And so that's how I would normally do it, but in this case I don't think we've got the time for it. If we do move Mimer's brother to Gemhaven, then by the time the party gets there, with the estimated length of this campaign, it would already be quite near the end of it. And so, on that journey, the mysteries would have to already have opportunities to be solved on the way, at least some of them. Now, of course, in Veil Rift, there's lots of opportunity for this. Now, how is the party going to find this out? I have no idea what the party is gonna do, so I have no idea how they're gonna find this out. I guess it's just gonna be something to improvise, to keep in my mind, and if an opportunity presents itself, to have that dropped. I suppose one way of doing it might be that since Ka has already made himself quite noticeable, if the party hangs around Shard's Calling for a while, then the Scale Guard might approach the party and take them in for questioning, at which point if Mima, if they see Mima there, they probably would know her, and that might be one way for them to get the information. Okay, so that's good. The other idea I had, which is kind of a continuation of what I had already planned, is for kind of a weak wizard to be found probably in Veil Rift, who was looking for a magic item like Ka's friend, to kind of lay the groundwork, plant a few more seeds that maybe there are some similarities which aren't exactly coincidences. So that's the thing I need to write down. Okay, so I've written Veil Rift. A weak wizard was led here to look for a magic artifact like Ka's friend. Maybe he's one of the magic wonder scammers. Okay, so another idea I had is that if the party does get captured or questioned, having a champion of Tritherion with them could get them out of trouble, depending on who the actual kind of captain of the guard or whoever there is. That might be a thing that helps. That's just more a thing for me to keep in mind rather than actually make a note about. Now, one more thing, which is that we're 3 sessions in and we've not had any action yet. Which, I mean, normally I pretty much just let the game flow how it does, and if the players get into dangerous areas, then there's going to be action. If not, then not. We're already a quarter in, we've not had action yet, and I did want the party to level up during this, so maybe? Although I don't really see how action could be put into this current situation without it seeming forced. Aside, of course, if they try to just break out Mimer's brother by force, which, by the way, if they do actually go in to try to break Mimer's brother out by force, without inquiring first or doing stuff like that, then I'm probably going to move Mimer's brother back into the prison dungeons, so that this breaking out actually feels satisfying, if they manage to accomplish it. And I was on the fence anyway whether or not to do this, so yeah. Actually, I've just had an idea, because I was thinking about, with Ka doing this reconnaissance currently, this is taking quite a while, and so with the other players there, waiting behind at the kind of the plaza, I don't want to waste that time. So what if we have a magic user who has kind of failed one of Zinthar's tests of power, and now is just trying to make a living in the city. I think that could be a good opportunity to kind of have both sides of this split party doing something valuable. Okay, so yeah, let's do that. How about we make it a bard? Because so far we've had druids, we've had wizards. How about a bard? How about Well, a bard, of course, needs to perform for to cast magic. So how about... Because we need something interesting for the party to want to interact with an individual. Otherwise it's just a background NPC. So how about it's this performer who is doing their best to perform, but something's making it difficult. Like, something is so obviously odd about them. Well, I was going to say armor, but how about, metal gloves, what they called? Gauntlets. Okay, well, how about it's this kind of buxom woman in this quite alluring red dress, kind of sleeveless, performing, singing, maybe even an element of dance, just to try to earn some amount of money to hopefully pay for a ship back to where she originally came from. But she's having great difficulty with it. Probably I'm going to give her disadvantage on her rolls. Because she's wearing these heavy metal gauntlets, or greaves? No, gauntlets, which have been cursed. They're a cursed item, which you found in a dungeon somewhere, which is actually one of Zinthar's tests of power pits of peril. And they're stuck on her. They've basically got Curse of Binding, if you want to use a Minecraft reference. That's making her performance really very difficult. And so that might make the players want to interact with her, especially when it's while they're waiting for Ka to return anyway. This is actually interesting. The idea that Zinthar has all of these little mini dungeons around the countryside that he probably his minions, either himself or his minions, orders to have stocked with monsters and traps, and maybe he can have different flavors of them. Like if there is a wizard who specializes in, I don't know, one of the schools of magic's necromancy, for example, then maybe he's got just the right mini dungeon prepared to test the death magic powers of this wizard. Whereas a divination wizard, for example, like Mr. W's character, Arkan, would have a different dungeon that he might be led to. Does that make sense with the previous idea of the plot of being led to find out what's happening with the Green Matriarch and on the way? Well, yeah, on the way. You could have this be a thing that's happening on the way, maybe. Yeah, because I was thinking that might be a way of introducing action as well. So that while traveling, they find this mini-dungeon, or they're led to this mini-dungeon, maybe in an effort to find a good resting spot, even though it's only one day's travel. Can I make that make sense? Although, exploring even just a mini-dungeon could take an entire session, if it's only 2 hours. I suppose a simple dungeon is something that I can make up on the fly, if it's something that feels like it would fit in the flow of the game. Maybe combined with that, the idea of Brack kind of feeling his powers wane a little bit in one spot. Maybe it's not anti-Tritherion cult or whatever. Maybe it's just one of those mini-dungeons that has some sort of divine cursed artifacts in there or something like that, and that's what Brack is feeling as they're walking by. Also, if they are supposed to be led to this place, maybe Sorum could claim that they need to find shelter somewhere because there's a storm on the way, even though it's clear skies and there is no storm on the way. But that being one, like a part of the routine, like maybe as a first hurdle. So yeah, that kind of makes sense. So the routine is these young magic users come to the island, and then Sorum finds them, tells about the story, please help me, that sort of thing. There are probably variations of that story, but anyway. And then on the way somewhere, as the first kind of hurdle, a little mini dungeon, nothing too deadly, just a little test of the power so that Zinthar can know what sort of flavor of magic they have, just to have a verification of that. And then they go on to whatever the main test of power would be. In this case, finding out what's what's the matter with the Green Matriarch, and if possible also maybe those Monsters of Uncertainty. I think that makes sense. If they do speak with this woman, who we haven't come up with a name for her yet, but if they do speak with her and they find this out, then maybe that could be the first clue about there being parallel lines. Like, yeah, there was, especially with Ka, because maybe she's the one who's come to this island looking for a powerful magical artifact. We'll need to come up with this. Hold on. I've named the object that she was looking for, the Divine Lyre of Persuasion. Yeah, it's like, oh, I came to this island, when I was younger, I was developing my magical powers, and it got to the point where I was performing little magical shows for people around my village and surrounding towns and stuff like that. And then someone took notice, and we got talking, and I was told about this magic artifact called the Divine Lyre of Persuasion being on this island. And there was this cheap boat trip because the man was a trader, and he had a ship that was leaving for the island in a few days, and he offered me a discount. And so I came to this island, and me and a few friends I met here, which would be the people who would have received her, searched for it, and we found the entrance to a dungeon where it was rumored to have been buried. Somehow they got separated, and she doesn't know if the friends she made on the island even made it out alive. She only knows that she made it out alive, but with these cursed gauntlets on there, which she put on in desperation when they got separated to try to give her some amount more protection. Of course, she wasn't wearing the dress then. She'd have been in adventuring gear. She's not stupid. But also, she's not a character in an MMORPG. And so now she's just trying to earn enough money by performing to get back to where she originally came from. But with how difficult these gauntlets are making her life, she's not having much progress. Now, what has she done about trying to remove the gauntlets? Okay, well, it's a curse. So she'd probably have gone to some temples to try to get them to remove the curse. Because there is a spell that removes curses. So let's say she tried going to Mirgani, the Council of Faith, but she couldn't get through to her. She got into the House of Harmony, to the temples, but there was a months-long waiting list for favors from this woman, and so she couldn't get through to her. She even went up to Veilrift, where maybe with those new magical powers there, maybe there's a new temple complex that is currently being built there, and there are already clerics there taking advantage of this magical space. And so, yeah, maybe that's a thing. Another thing that points to Veilrift. Saying she even went to Veilrift for the new temples that are being built there. And she even got through to one of the clerics, but he wanted, 500 gold pieces. No, that's too much. Okay, in Pathfinder, a masterworked weapon costs something like 300 gold pieces around there, I think. So I think removing a curse might be equal in value to a masterworked weapon, because this is a lot of effort that goes into this. So let's just say they wanted 300 gold pieces to remove the curse from these items, from these gauntlets, and if she had that amount of money, then she could have already made it back home to her family, who could have maybe helped her with this, or something like that. That's another thing pointing to there. And if the party wants to help this woman, if they fancy accepting another side quest, then maybe either she would accompany them to Veilrift, in which case if they're going along that road and if they do pause by one of these mini dungeons, maybe she can recognize some similarities between what she went through and what the party is now about to go through. And maybe that could be hints of something happening, because I think I have to increase the rate at which I give out hints, because, again, the shorter campaign length. Normally I would have this happen much more naturally, but I am kind of pushing a bit. I mean, if I wanted to make it really obvious, I could have her maybe recognize the marks of Tritherion on our own cleric. And actually having her... Actually, that's a good idea. Having her speak to Brack about maybe knowing a way to remove curses or anything like that. And then that gets into the conversation, perhaps. I don't know. But if the party don't help her, then it was still just a good bit of clues about there might be some parallels happening here. So now we just need a name. By the way, I was thinking of a human. How about Alea Goldmark? Seems reasonable. So if we do intend, so if this character would carry along with us, going into potentially a mini dungeon, then I would need to come up with a stat block with her having bardic abilities, that sort of thing. But I don't think I need to come up with this yet. That's just waste of time. If she does, if the players do speak with her and they're interested and she does join the party for a little while and they do go into the thing, see how many ifs there are? And there's plenty of space for me to do that. Her knowing Draconic as well could be quite useful for her to maybe act as a translator between some of the Scaleguard and... yeah, that could be useful. I guess if she is gonna make performance checks, then I do kind of have to know her charisma, at least. Anyway, that's good. What else do we need? Well, I think we need to come up with one more NPC who is the captain of the guard in the House of Harmony. The party is likely going to meet that character, either if Ka is going to be captured because they're going to try to shoot him, because he circled the main seat of power here a few times, and then started dive bombing down to one of the buildings with a world that has magic items in it. What if he drops a flask of fireball, or I don't know, whatever, or even casts a spell? No, of course they're going to try to shoot him with the ballistas. So maybe he would get captured, because I was thinking about this with a height, like if he's flying and gets shot down and then falls, that could be the death of the character right there. So maybe with the roofs, maybe I could describe it so that if the character does get shot down, the character lands on one of the roofs and tumbles down almost to the edge, not quite falling off. I don't generally like giving the characters plot armor like that, and this is a bit of plot armor. I mean, this is a bit of plot armor, but in the context of this game and how few sessions we have and how early we are, I think it's fine to give a little bit more leeway in this case, even though usually I don't give plot armor like I said previously. If Ka does escape, and then if the party sticks around for a while, the Scaleguard would come looking for them and then bring them in for questioning, at which point it would probably be the captain of the guard talking with them, and so we need to come up with this character. So I've decided to call him Razef, the Dragonborn, of course, captain of the guard at the House of Harmony. He knows Common, Draconic, and Elven. He's got an Investigator 4 and Insight of 3. I've given him 25 hit points, actually they're 1d8. I could go through the process of figuring out which hit points he should have based on what other like what it says in the DMG, or in the Monster Manual, I forget which one. But I don't have that much time, and it just needs to feel right, I think, especially if it's not meant to be a character who you fight. As long as I have a value to fall back on, as long as it feels about right, I think that's okay. Although 25, let's reduce that to maybe 20. AC 18, yeah, since he's wearing full plate. Speed 30, well, yeah, speed 30, because he's got a strength of 15, so that would work. And yeah, that's good. So, if we now just think about how we intend the session to go. So, Ka goes over, shouts, probably is going to either be shot down or not. Someone notices. If they don't, then they're just going to wait around, and then they're going to have to come to the House of Harmony to find out what happened with Ka. In which case, then they can learn about Mama's brother having been already transported off to Gemhaven. But if Ka does return, then the plan is, if I have, well, I think have a look in at least the magic shop for magic items, which I'm going to hint at, probably Sorum is going to hint at, and then to set out towards Vale Rift, and then maybe come across a mini dungeon. We won't get this far in this session, likely. If we do get this far in the session, I can just make it up on the fly and just draw it down on roll 20. I think that's probably alright for this session. I hope. Anyway, I'll see you then. Bye-bye.